All right, so thanks so much for getting to our forums, everyone, today. And at this point, I will pass it to the Executive Director of Green New Deal Housing, the one, the only, the amazing Rachel Wagner. Give it up, everyone.
So welcome. Yep, I'm Rachel Wagner, and I'm currently serving as Interim Executive Director of Green New Deal Housing. And with me today is our engagement coordinator, who also currently serves on the board of directors as the chair. She's in the back of the room, Stacy Renee. Those of you on Zoom can't see Stacy, but you will see her when it's time for the Q&A, because she is going to come up and answer questions with me. And not surprisingly, most of us who are engaged in the work with Green New Deal Housing serve more than one role right now, because we are a fairly new organization. We're kind of scrappy, and we really enjoy utilizing a variety of sort of skills and creative energies from people who recognize that the issue of housing is much bigger than a house, so to speak. So that's where I'll start. Shelter is a basic need. Everyone has a right to healthy, durable, affordable housing. All of us should be able to operate, maintain, and adapt our housing to remain functional and beneficial now and into the future, even in changing conditions. But sadly, that's not the case. And it's the worst if you're poor. The poorest people, and in most communities across the nation, these are disproportionately people of color, live in the poorest housing with the poorest infrastructure. And this impacts not only their well-being, but the well-being of all of us. In addition, housing accounts for 20% of all CO2 emissions. In the state of Minnesota, housing also accounts for roughly 25% of all energy use. What does that mean? Well, climate change only increases the importance of durable, affordable, and healthy housing for everyone. Housing is entangled with the other complex systems of our society, environment, and economy, and almost all policy in regard to housing tends to favor those who already benefit from these systems. The social and racial and economic and geographic injustices in our communities can only be solved if those of us with more privilege, and I'm just going to go out on a limb here, most of us in this room, join the many with less privilege who have been leading most of the fight for centuries against the status quo, which is stacked against those who have less. We need to come together and push as hard as we can against these embedded systems. And these are systems we all currently rely on. And the forces invested in this business as usual, because too often this results in the benefit for the few, not the many. Author Naomi Klein writes a lot about the integrated nature of climate change, and I really appreciate her statement that it's not an issue. Climate change is a message, and it is sort of all of these intersecting factors coming together to topple the systems that were created to benefit the few and not the many. We can't fix systemic crises our society faces with isolated efforts. In essence, we can't approach systems change without systems thinking. And this is what Green New Deal Housing seeks to do. We're a relatively new nonprofit in the Arrowhead region with the mission to develop equitable zero net energy housing and a green collar workforce. Our vision is to live in a sustainable future with our community. The infographic that you're looking at is our attempt to distill the complex, interrelated, and integrated issues that all kind of circle housing. It's daunting to think about fundamentally changing the systems that drive and perpetuate the problems that we seek to mitigate, but this is exactly what's needed. We need more housing in our region, and that need is compounded by a labor shortage in the building trades. And it's at this intersection where Green New Deal housing works. We use 3 interrelated program areas that all support each other. Housing development. We have the mission to develop only zero net energy homes, which I'll talk about a little bit more in the minutes to come. And we focus this development on underinvested communities. Workforce development. We are delivering green construction theory and practice focused on removing barriers to the workforce in the secure, stable job sector of the building trades. And last but not least, engagement. We work with participation of stakeholders, outreach, and partnership focused on equity. So, these are ambitious goals and an almost unimaginable uphill battle, fighting the status quo. But we believe there is really no other way to address what we're trying to address. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you through those 8 icons that you saw a couple slides back. I'm sure you memorized all of them. We're going to talk about climate change mitigation, social justice, workforce training, affordable homes, public engagement, bridging the gap, community benefit, and last but not least, clean energy. So again, climate change and housing. Housing accounts for 20% of all CO2 emissions in the state of Minnesota, nationwide, and pretty much globally as well. The building sector, so if you take houses and other buildings, they account that sector of construction and operation of buildings accounts for nearly 40% of all CO2 emissions. It is a giant slice of the pie, and it's barely budged in terms of reductions in the decades that we have been measuring CO2 emissions. In fact, the housing sector in Minnesota, emissions have risen. So in the state of Minnesota, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency measures CO2 emissions across 9 sectors. And since 2005, CO2 emissions associated with housing have risen 14%. And of course, we know we're supposed to be going in the opposite direction, right?
How will you say why that is?
Yeah, I would love to say why that is. Thank you. So that's because more than 2/3 of homes in Minnesota are heated with fossil fuels, heat their domestic water with fossil fuels, cook with fossil fuels. There is no such thing as clean burning natural gas. Do not believe what you see in posters and on the trucks. Not a thing. Burning natural gas emits carbon dioxide. So does burning oil. So does burning propane. And until we remove burning these fuels from our houses, we really don't have a prayer of reducing the emissions associated with our housing. The reason those signs say clean burning natural gas is that the CO2 emissions emitted per unit of natural gas are arguably slightly lower than the CO2 emissions emitted by burning a unit of oil or gasoline for your car. But to say something that is less dirty is clean is an outright lie. We know this. We have to address this. We have to share this information. There are, interestingly, with housing in particular, there are well-developed solutions with lots of examples to make homes with little to no CO2 emissions, buildings that produce as much energy as they consume, or even produce more energy than they consume. Unfortunately, the housing sector has not been adopting these practices at nearly the pace or the scale needed. Green New Deal housing is working to change that. Most of the power, most of the money is held by people and institutions heavily invested in the status quo. So the question I think that follows from why do houses contribute so much to CO2 emissions should be, why do we keep burning natural gas in our homes when we actually don't need to? And I think because there are corporate and business pressures for us to maintain the status quo, because that's how they make their money. And these people, institutions, businesses are not really inclined or motivated to see or address climate change, or, by the way, racism or environmental and other economic injustices. But these systemic disparities are not only unjust, they are unsustainable. And we are seeing this right now in the collapse of our ecosystems, both natural and societal. Green New Deal housing focuses our programming towards solutions around housing justice, economic justice, environmental justice, but ultimately, all this work really is about social justice and improving overall community welfare. So keep going. How do we do this? We do this in collaboration with others, first and foremost. Our work is just one part of a much larger, much needed effort toward an equitable, collaborative, community-wide transformation. And many of you are probably, at least if not more aware than I am, of other organizations and people in our community right now working toward these efforts. We need all of them and more, because we are not making a dent in so many of these needs. Am I not loud enough? Oh, I'm so sorry. Usually I'm too loud. Thank you. So Green New Deal housing rests in part on the premise that all new housing can and should be built to zero energy, to eliminate CO2 emissions of housing, to address climate adaptation, resiliency, and long-term affordability, which I will talk about. We are building this type of housing in neighborhoods most in need of investment, but we are also hoping that our investment will spur additional investment across all neighborhoods. We'll get to that. So I think I mentioned earlier, we also have a shortage in the workforce trades. We have a shrinking construction trades workforce. And so what that means is we don't have the capacity to build the needed housing, let alone build all green housing. So Green New Deal housing is helping to create that. We invite present and future workforce to participate in and lead the growth in green building. And we focus our efforts, again, specifically on underinvested neighborhoods and populations. You're looking right now at 4 people who have taken Green New Deal housing training in that slide. 2 of them, actually 3 of them, are on the crew building the first Green New Deal housing zero net energy home in the Central Hillside, which I'll talk more about. You are also looking in the foreground on the right at the construction manager and program lead of Community Action Duluth's community construction program. And I'll talk more about that. So we are delivering our workforce training both individually to people already in the business sector and through additional workforce training programs, most currently working closely with Community Action Duluth and their construction training program for folks who have had barriers to entry into the workforce otherwise. And I never tire of saying it is the most favorite part of my job. So our curriculum and our training focus on the theory and practice of green building. We present the work of home building in the larger context of building equitable opportunity for long-term impact and welfare. And we define green building thus. Number 1, healthy. Not just for the people living in the houses, but for those who are constructing the houses and the surrounding communities. Number 2, durable. If we don't build durably, we could build the greenest, most energy efficient building. And if it fails prematurely, then it's not very green at all, because one of the least green things that happens is when we have to dismantle or take apart something before it really did reach the end of its useful life and rebuild because we made mistakes. Number 3, energy efficient and fossil fuel free. And number 4, critically accessible to everyone. So what does that mean? Affordability is not just about the sale price of a home. We suffer in our nation in particular from a commodification of basic needs. The result of that is that so many people struggle to meet their basic needs. They struggle to be able to afford a healthy, secure place to live. They struggle to be able to afford nutritional food and enough of it. And they struggle to be able to afford to take care of their bodies and their minds. And that's because we have commodified housing into real estate. We have commodified healthcare into a medical establishment that prioritizes profits. And we have commodified food as well, more toward big business and less toward actual health and nutrition. Green New Deal housing isn't taking on the medical establishment or big food, but we are taking on big housing, let's call it, because everyone deserves to live in healthy, comfortable, durable housing. And with housing, the biggest obstacles to changing the way we build are not scientific and they're not technical. We actually do have all of the materials, methods, and knowledge and examples of how to build new and renovate far differently than we are right now. And the barriers are not even economic. Building to net zero new costs about 10% more than building to code. And the economic and the environmental benefits of that start immediately. We invite participation and collaboration with stakeholders and leaders from the communities we serve. It is a fundamental part of our organization, the way we conduct our operations and our programming. We are in the public space in many ways. That's why I'm here today. That's why Stacy's here today. We raise awareness with presentations like these, participation in panels and discussions. We learn and we interact with and we magnify our work through community partnership. I mentioned Community Action Duluth. They have been an outstanding partner for Green New Deal Housing for more than a year now. We also have an outstanding partner in Fond du Lac Tribal and Community College, in particular, their Office of Workforce Development and Customized Training, but throughout the community college as a whole. And we are working on our next housing projects with Riverfront Community Development, a West Duluth community organization some of you might have known as SVENDA. We join directly with other organizations to deliver projects and programs, and more indirectly by participating in their discussions and citywide discussions about the issues and the development of solutions. We have some big tasks around the notion of bridging the gap. And I want to say that every affordable housing developer, every nonprofit housing developer operates using subsidies between the cost to build and the cost to house, whether the housing that they produce is rental or for sale. We are focusing our housing development in neighborhoods with the greatest need. We have expanded who we sort of define as the greatest need beyond some of the more traditional affordable housing developers. Affordable housing is often measured in median income, and we are working with communities up to about 115% of area median income, rather than populations at 80% of area median income or below. And the reason for this is we have identified enormous gaps in ability to house yourselves adequately, up to and exceeding 115%. We also recognize that the need is much more nuanced and widespread than just measuring someone's income. And so we are developing our programs in concert with stakeholders around a variety of barriers to purchasing. Oops, sorry. We are working just as hard to address the gaps in opportunity for economic development as well. And I want to just point at these statistics. And really the more important statistic is the very bottom one with the asterisk, because of course I started giving presentations like this a few years ago, and then I recently thought I should probably update the data, and I'm still not probably as updated as it was. And so, but right here in Duluth, the median home price to buy any house in Duluth rose more than 16% just from 2021 or 2022. And if you who were paying attention might have noticed that houses were selling over and over and over again at all prices above the asking price. There were bidding wars going on in Duluth, just like there were in Los Angeles and Portland, Oregon, and New York City. And unfortunately, while that was going on and that average rise in price was more than 16%, the median income did rise, but only by 3%. And effectively what that meant is between 2021 and 2022, the gap rose even more than it had in prior years in Duluth. Green New Deal housing has its own gaps as well, and we are utilizing a variety of mechanisms to bridge the gaps in our own costs with grants, donations, using replicable and efficient designs, trying to scale up our work as rapidly as possible, because we're finding that on a per home or a per square foot basis, it can cost less if you're developing 5 at once instead of 1. What if we viewed green housing as adequate housing? What if we viewed it as a right instead of a privilege? Healthy, durable, energy efficient, and fossil fuel free housing should be accessible to all. We don't need natural gas in our homes. Going back to that, natural gas pollutes the atmosphere and it pollutes our homes. We need to be transitioning to clean, renewable energy in all sectors of our energy use. And one of the ways we can actually accomplish this is by focusing first on conservation and efficiency. When we're talking about changing the status quo, we need to also recognize that fundamentally, we're using too much energy in this country anyway. So if we build without fossil fuels, the buildings are healthier for the occupants. We can add solar panels, renewable energy systems, especially if we make the homes require less energy from the get-go. When we add solar panels, renewable energy systems, then the energy can be produced renewably. So Green New Deal housing is doing that. All of the housing that we develop is all electric, meaning they don't use fossil fuels. You are looking at our pilot project, the first zero net energy home that we are developing. It's in the Central Hillside at 108 East 11th Street. It will be done in about 2 months. So these homes are designed to start with to require less than 1/3 of the energy that a conventionally built new home would require. So wrap your head around that, right? If a new home would require 100 units of energy, we'll just call it that, this home, before you even put the solar panels on it, requires about 30 units of energy. So that's a game changer right there, but before you're even talking about the solar panels, and that's a game changer with regard to what it costs to operate the home and with regard to the environmental impacts of that home. Add the solar panels, get to zero net energy. Not only is the home cleaner, but you have now just reduced the operating costs for the long term that much further, adding to that economic stability for the household. So Green New Deal housing still faces an $80,000 gap in funds for this house, largely because we undertook our activities during the pandemic. And we have never seen such an escalation of building costs in our region or even nationwide as we have in the last 3 years. You can help. Our collective future depends on the collective changes we make in the present. Now, the policies of the market and current legislation don't work. Ultimately, everyone suffers from the persistent disinvestments and misinvestments in housing, energy, climate, and workforce development. As a community, we need more housing. We need to reduce our CO2 emissions. We need more tradespeople, and we need more economic opportunity and livability opportunity for those who have systematically, chronically, and historically suffered barriers to this. Green New Deal housing is working at these intersections for the benefit of all of us. Housing and its impacts last for generations. Let's help this generation and the next build for the future we all need to thrive. Thank you. With that, I would like to invite Stacey Renee up. And do we have a few minutes for questions?
Yes, they do. I'm just finding the other microphone. Oh, you got it.
All
Perfect.
right.
Yeah, so Stacy, come on up, and if you have a question, obviously just raise your hand, we'll pass it around.
So on the screen is our website, greennewdealhousing.org. We have brought some brochures, and yep, there is a remittance envelope inside them. If you can give, please give as generously and as quickly as you can. It takes all of us to do this kind of work. Also on there is our Instagram address. Is that what that's called? As you can tell, I'm not a big social media person, and I only much later was like, oh, I think there's an icon that you can put that says that's Instagram, but I'm telling you, website, Instagram. You can write us through info@greennewdealhousing.org. You can find our phone number on our website. We hope you'll peruse it. There's a lot more information there.